Hey, what's going on everybody? Justin here, and in this video I want to continue my best of 2024 series that I've sort of been doing on different categories of books that I've been reading so far this year, obviously. And then this one is going to be mostly modern history, I guess I'm going to say. It was going to be general history, but I looked at them and they're all kind of like modernish for me. I will be doing medieval and like ancient classical as well afterwards in the near future. I've done videos on my favorite science books of the year. I'll put like links up there and in the corner and down below and all that stuff as well. And I've also done one on 2024 new releases as well. But let's just go ahead. Let's just start with an honorable mention. So this one's an honorable mention because I already mentioned it in my 2024 releases, and it's The Demon of Unrest, the saga of hubris, heartbreak, and heroism at the dawn of the Civil War by Erik Larson. And this one was just a really good introduction to kind of setting up the context and the time and era of the origins of the American Civil War in 1861. The book deals with the election of Lincoln, kind of all the controversies kind of going on there with the some of the southern states seceding during that time period, but also some of the kind of like the melodrama of like assassination plots and stuff kind of going on as well, with the Pinkertons and everything like that. But you definitely get perspectives from both sides. It follows the threads of about 4 or 5 prominent figures from both the South and the North, kind of all dealing with Charleston Harbor, and then obviously the garrison over at Fort Sumter leading up to their artillery bombardment. But I really enjoy Erik Larson's style, incorporating tons of primary sources. I've only read his other book, Dead Wake, but now that I've been reading more kind of recent-ish history, post-Renaissance history for me, might be checking out some of his other books, like Demon in the White City and Garden of like the Splendid and Vile and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I highly encourage you guys to check that out, especially if you like American history or Civil War history. So next up is going to be an audiobook. Unfortunately, I couldn't even get it through Interlibrary alone. I was so sad. It is Natural Magic, Emily Dickinson, Charles Darwin, and the Dawn of Modern Science. And this was just a really fabulous sort of, it's hard to describe. It's a dual biography of Emily Dickinson and Charles Darwin, but it's also kind of like the life and times of these near contemporary figures in the realms of like culture and science and everything on both sides of the Atlantic. So like I said, it's hard to describe, but it was just really awesome. Emily Dickinson's like one of the only poets I like. Obviously, I enjoy Charles Darwin. Reading his, reading about him, reading his stuff. He's mentioned in like half my nature books and everything like that. But you definitely get the biographical portions as well. But it was just really interesting, like kind of in this era. Science and stuff, natural science was just starting to become a thing. Before it was natural history or natural philosophy, and it started becoming definitely like a more split. We're going to be making things more of like a hard science. We're going to be very objective, cold, all that kind of, just numerical, separate any emotions out of it and all that kind of stuff towards like the natural sciences. But both figures, Emily Dickinson and Charles Darwin, didn't really see it that way. They thought, this doesn't need to be like such a harsh dichotomy between, art and science and everything. But it's kind of interesting just learning how they came about it from similar but kind of distinct backgrounds. Whereas like Dickinson was like formally schooled in a lot of the sciences, but obviously, was very in tune with like writing and poetry and everything like that. And Darwin's kind of similar in that he didn't really have formal science training till, well, actually, never. He really didn't have formal science training, but the way he approached science and stuff was definitely from like, the natural magic as opposed to like supernatural, is where natural magic comes from. Just seeing like the beauty and aesthetic and everything kind of going on there, and just kind of how he did his experiments, over at his own plot and everything. So anyways, like I said, you get kind of the history of the biographical stuff, but you also get a lot of the science incorporated throughout. And I just found it really fascinating. If you like either of those figures, definitely check that one out for sure. And I haven't done my plug for my Etsy shop for a while, so if you're still here, thanks so much. You might as well subscribe if you're actually here and made it this far. But like, for example, I just put up Sapere Aude in my Etsy shop this morning, which for those who don't know, means dare to reason or have courage to know. have courage to use reason, everything like that. So I just find it really interesting. I'm reading a book on the Enlightenment with some friends and everything, and that's kind of like one of their mottos. So anyways, moving on to another one. We got The Pursuit of Power, Europe 1815 to 1914 by Richard Evans. And this was just a phenomenal work on the long 19th century. I've always wanted to kind of like read something on it, and I had this on my shelf I think for 3 or 4 years. And for this title and the next one, I read them both for March of the Mammoths, which is just a reading event in March where you try to read books over 800 pages, and both of these ones fit it. But I felt like this, like if I had to pick a book in like the last like couple of years, this is probably the one I've like just learned the most new knowledge and like new facts and new information from. Not necessarily, I guess, always a good thing, just like getting a book for information per se, but I feel like with a history book on a topic I was like kind of interested in, but just didn't really have a lot of I just had like, just the bare groundwork, I guess, from like my other history reading and everything. But this is all about Europe during like kind of that, like I said, the long 19th century. Just so much is going on. So this is dealing basically between the time periods of the French Revolution and World War One. So many nation states kind of come into fruition during this time period, such as Italy, Germany, for example. You got lots of prominent figures, Bismarck, Metternich, Garibaldi in Italy. I don't know why I'm focusing on like Italy and Germany like all of a sudden, but I enjoyed how the book too is not just pure political / military like narrative stuff. I was kind of nervous about that going in because the first like little section sort of is kind of recapping like kind of the era of like Napoleonic Wars and stuff like that. But there's huge sections just on culture, just on like scientific development, just new technologies and how they affected like the European countries and stuff, such as electricity, the different rail lines, telecommunications and stuff like that. I found that super interesting. Like I said, it was just a really great balance between getting the political narrative flowing, but also incorporating just tons of arts and culture and science and everything throughout. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I kept reading, and I think it's just under 8. I think it's like 700 something pages of text, and then like 50 pages of notes and all that stuff. But I had a list of different figures that I might want to read like biographies on, or different topics to like kind of look into as well. I feel like when a book does that, that means it did a pretty good job. And then lastly is a book I never would have thought I would never pick out myself in like a million years. And it's The Soviet Century, Archaeology of a Lost World by Karl Schlegel. This is translated out of the German by Rodney Livingstone. And this book is, I don't even know how to describe exactly what it is. It's not a history of the Soviet Union, but what it does is it's just a collection of like, I can't remember if it's like 80 or 100, something like that, different essays. Let's see. Yeah, 59 different essays on all kinds of different things, ranging from, how did people like live in like their like forced apartments? How did people build like the giant like hydroelectric dams and stuff in the Soviet Union? It's all about how did regular normal people, how did they actually live their lives throughout pretty much the entire area of the USSR. And it was just super fascinating. I've read a little bit of like Russian history, like pre-Soviet Union stuff, but I think this is my first real book on anything dealing with the Soviet era. And I really enjoy social histories. Like I said, I'm not always like big into, looking at how like the aristocracy or the monarchs or, the bourgeoisie, how they always like deal with everything. But like I said, this is just how did regular people, what was it like, trying to get through town, actually trying to buy stuff when everything was like rationed and you had like different kinds of currencies, like, the black market, different things like that. I just found it super fascinating. And it kind of, the whole thing just gives you a vibe of like, kind of just like, defiance and resilience through a lot of the different stuff. Like learning about like the Moscow kitchens is like a highlight for me, for an example. Just thoroughly enjoyable. I don't know even, like I said, this one's kind of a weird one to explain as well. But like I said, if you enjoy social history, if you like learning about how like regular people lived, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. Especially if you want to learn more about 20th century Russia. This is definitely a book for you. Definitely not necessarily for the faint-hearted. There is like a lot kind of going on like during this time period. You got the gulags. That kind of is dealt with in a few different essays and things like that, different purges and stuff. So it's just, like I said, just kind of puts you in the perspective of if you were growing up and living through all this, like what would it really be like. And I felt like the book, the tone and like vibe of the book just did a really good job selling that. And this, like I said, it's a monster of a work as well, and there's actually quite a few photographs incorporated throughout as well. So anyways, really enjoyed this one as well, and this was definitely like one of the biggest surprises for me. So there you have it. Those are my, I guess, 3 in an honorable mention of my favorite kind of modern-ish histories that I've read so far this year. Let me know if you've read any of these works or their authors, what you thought about them. And if you have, anything post 1800s for history that you've really enjoyed recently, let me know what you thought of it and give me a good recommendation down below. And whether you're reading stuff on modern history or not, always remember, read victoriously.